let's talk about today with Arvin. Today on the show, I'm very glad to have a special guest. She was elected in the 2015 election in Sarnia-Lambton, and in 2016 was named the most collegial MP in Parliament by her peers in Maclean's Parliamentary of the Year Award. I'm here joined by Marilyn Gladu. Marilyn, how are you doing today?
Hi, how are you? Thanks for having me.
So I gotta ask you. I mean, we've seen some pretty, strange things during this past year in the pandemic. But I gotta ask, how are you and your family doing?
Oh, we're doing very well. I mean, obviously, this has been a tough time for everybody, but my daughter is pregnant, and she's
Oh,
going to have a baby in
congratulations!
about 10 weeks. So yeah, so I'm excited about that, and that's been interesting for her in COVID times. And my other daughter's getting married in September, so it's going to be a year of joy, even amongst all the struggles.
That's fantastic. Well, congratulations on that. That's a pretty uh proud moment, I guess, for as a mom to reach that milestone. That's fantastic. Congrats, Marilyn. So on a lot of these political shows, people are always having discussions about the issues, and there's not much opportunity for youth and young people and perhaps just anyone else listening to, I guess, learn more about members of parliament and their journey. And so I know you released a book, and I want to get into that later. But in general, I'm really interested in hearing about your story. So your early life, and I'm sort of curious. Growing up as a kid, what was some of the things like? Were you exposed to politics or social issues at a young age?
You know, it's funny, I didn't have any issue at all with politics. I never really thought much about it until I was in my 40s. In fact, I used to vote by who had the most signs. So that's why I always have a lot of signs on my campaign. I've actually voted for all the different parties over time. And it wasn't until I was in my 40s. I was traveling globally for a company that I worked for, and I had to go to 254 plants in the world. And so when I came back to Canada, I would think what a great country we have. But I really felt that it was, not being managed well by the politicians of the day. So I thought, well, I could whine about it like most Canadians, or I could do something about it. So that's when I joined the local provincial members board and then eventually the federal members board and became the president of the association when the sitting member federally decided to retire. And so it was my job to find the lucky one to replace her. And we had quite a number of problems in Sarnia-Lambton at the time. And I thought, you know what? I've got the experience, 32 years of engineering, and I can make a difference. So put my name forward, and here I am.
That's fantastic. Yeah, that's really fascinating. It is very, different than many of the paths we see other members of parliament go through during their careers. And so you did mention, you've had this extensive, very experienced career in engineering, and growing up as a younger person, there weren't many, young women getting into engineering, which was, awful back then. And it was sort of a very glass breaking moment for you to sort of jump in and say, hey, like, this is a field that I'm interested in. And, I'm going to take up engineering. And you studied, engineering and chemical engineering, I believe, at Queen's. And, so do you think you could perhaps share with us some of the, the thoughts going through, during that age as a young person, thinking about your career and, what sort of, I guess, led you to want to study engineering during that time?
Well, when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do for my life, I wanted to have a job where I could always get a job and I wanted to make a lot of money. And the guidance counselor at the time said, well, computer science might be good or engineering, but engineering is a man's job, so you really couldn't do that. And of course, being
Oh,
told I can't do something is always, though, it gets me thinking maybe I should try. And I had a chemistry teacher who took us on a road trip to Queens to the engineering faculty. And that's what sparked my interest in engineering. And so, of course, as you said, there were not very many women in engineering, maybe 13% when I was there. And when I graduated, I built a woman's washroom everywhere I worked for the first like 5 or 10 years because there wasn't one. And so over the years, especially when I was working in construction, that was another place where there weren't a lot of women. So certainly I've toughened up over the years, but I became the global leader over those 254 plants, and from there brought my experience to Parliament, where I'm the first female engineer in the House of Commons ever.
that's awesome. Wow. And so, as you said, I was, checking out your book, and It talks about all your interesting, the places you've traveled during your time as an engineer, and it must have been really interesting because you were this, as you said, you were sort of a trailblazer, I guess, in the engineering field. Sort of. Less than 15% of women were in the engineering field. All of, lots of men. You were probably facing a lot of issues, and I'm just sort of curious, like, I guess from engineering to politics, which is fantastic that you stepped in and threw your hat in the ring. But I guess during all those years of, traveling and I guess, rising up in the ranks, did you ever face any, I guess social issues or political issues that you sort of went like, somebody should pay attention to this?
Well, certainly, the discrimination and the pay equity issues that women face, I did experience those, and harassment in the workplace. I've experienced that, and I was actually, if you've read my book, you know that I was attacked when I was in Hong Kong. So, there are dangers for a woman traveling alone. And I experienced all of those things, but I would say as well that I had a lot of great experiences and was a mentor to many other women that are up and coming. So I think while I was a trailblazer and I faced some adversity, I think it made me a stronger person. And I could bring all of those experiences to help Parliament become a better place for women to be and encourage young women to be leaders.
That's awesome, fantastic. And for those listening, Marilyn's book is called "The Tales of the Globetrot." And unfortunately, I haven't had time to read the full thing. I was just giving it a quick review because I just discovered it recently, and I think the book was released in November of just this past year, correct?
That's correct, and then it went on the bestsellers list, and so you can get your copy at Amazon or at Friesen Press, and if you're in Sarnia, it's available at the Bookkeeper.
That's fantastic. Awesome. That's cool. So I guess for because you know how young people are, they don't always, particularly read. And I know this book's actually available on like online. You
You
can
can
actually
get an
buy it too,
ebook on iTunes or Google, yeah.
which is it's good for, yeah, I think it's I advise all the young folks out there listening to pick it. It looks like an interesting book, definitely, and pick it up. I guess, like, what would you say from all the places you've traveled to, what's sort of one place you've traveled to where I guess was sort of like an enriching experience for you, or something that an experience that it sort of changed the way you thought about an issue, perhaps?
Well, I think everywhere I went, there was something, interesting. But I think Indonesia was a place that really opened my eyes to the reality of the world because, when I was there, I didn't realize that women, even in 2001, did not have a status there. So I was like property that could be owned. And there was a riot that broke out while I was there, and I ended up having to leave my audit and go to the airport. And there was a lot of tension in the country as well. They had been conquered by the Dutch, and they don't like the Dutch. And I look very Dutch. So being in that whole environment, I was recognizing that, living in Canada, where women have equality and status and the vote, and we don't think about these things, and so that was, I think, something that changed me.
So yeah, I guess it must have, like, really, I guess, with all the issues that we have here in North America with women's issues, I guess seeing it on a global perspective, the issues that women face across the world, it's it sort of reminds us that the work's not done, right? And there's still a lot of work to
Well,
do,
that's right. There's
for
more
sure.
to do, and we've got International Women's Day coming up on Monday. So it's a chance to reflect on, the progress that we have made and to make tracks to get the world in a better position.
Yeah, definitely, exactly. Well said. That's fantastic. And so on regarding your I guess parliamentary work, I believe you're on the committee for it's something relating to I guess women's issues in the parliamentary committees. And so I'd imagine that besides as a member of parliament and during your engineering field, you must care a lot about women's issues in general. And as you said, with International Women's Day coming up, is there something that you sort of want people to really focus on and draw their attention to, I guess, issue wise, or something that's going on perhaps not even in Canada, that we need more people, I guess, paying attention to when it comes to women's issues?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is that 1 in 3 Canadian women will experience violence in their lifetime. That's just not acceptable. So we've got to do something because uh, we studied the issue when I was at committee, and there are some alarming things happening in the country. They said that nearly 30% of women that go to university end up um, experiencing sexual assault in the first 8 weeks that they're at university. And that's a statistic that is awful for any country, but for Canada, I was astounded.
For sure, yeah. It just goes to show that there's still a lot of work we need to do right here at home as well. So it's very interesting, and I know your career is very interesting, and the work that you're doing is definitely a lot of trailblazing stuff and fascinating stuff, and a lot of stuff that perhaps youth should look up to. And when it comes to I guess having such a successful career in engineering, and then hopping into federal politics. And I'm sort of curious because, like as you said, you didn't start really paying attention to politics until I guess your 40s, and you became a member of parliament in the 2015 election. So I'm sort of curious, like what was like a motivating and inspiring factor that made you want to throw your hat in the ring in the 2015 election?
Well, in Sarnia, we had actually 20% unemployment amongst young people and 10% in the general population. And we had an aging population and no plan for all of the long-term care facilities and the services that the seniors were going to need. And the population was stagnant. And so I looked at these complex problems and the people that were presenting to run as candidates, and I thought, I'm a solver of complex problems. I think I'm probably in the best position to be able to create jobs. I had a position at the time, I was the business director for Worley Parsons and responsible for creating 400 jobs in Toronto, 350 here in the Sarnia office, and some in the States as well. And so I thought, I've got the experience to do this, and the society has been good to me. It's time for me to give back.
Wow, that's really awesome. And so I guess like how was your experience with the campaign? I guess because you might have been putting your foot in the water in some in a field that perhaps you didn't have the most I guess experience with compared to some people who are career politicians, et cetera, et cetera. So I guess how was that experience? Coming from the engineering field and
That was a big shock. I mean, you can imagine I went from being 32 years a very well respected member of the community and instantly overnight, um, you know, uh, despised by all, as a politician. And the hatred on social media is unbelievable. And it's a continual onslaught. And then, of course, the pace of work in Parliament is incredibly slow. So, as a person that was used to working globally and getting things done, taking action, it's painful to watch the pace of progress sometimes at the government level.
definitely, yeah. I know it's a pretty long and a little bit slow process for sure. And you've done a lot of stuff during your past couple of years as a member of parliament. Notably in 2017, you sponsored a private members bill, the Framework on Palliative Care in Canada Act. And it's very difficult to as an opposition member to get legislation sort of passed and recognized by your opposition members. But as mentioned through your award in 2016, you do like to work a lot with across the aisle with other members. So I guess what's your experience been like as a member of parliament, in the opposition, working with other members, trying to get legislation and that stuff passed? How's your experience been?
Well, I was really fortunate with the palliative care bill. I was one of less than 300 people that have ever had a private member's bill passed. And the collegiality that I displayed that won me the award in 2016 and again this last year, um, that has helped because I do appreciate that everyone that's in Parliament, they're all excellent individuals trying to do the right thing for the country. We don't always agree, but I worked with stakeholders and came with the bill and worked with the NDP and the Liberals. Actually, Jane Philpott was the Minister of Health when I brought the bill. And she said, Marilyn, this is actually a very good bill. She said, with a few changes, I think I could support this bill. And so that's the kind of cooperation that we need to get. Obviously, not every day is collegial. We have question period that is full of partisan entertainment. I would put forward. But the rest of the time, I think we all have to recognize that we're trying to do the right thing for the country, and is more than one way to do that thing. And so the discussion has to be on what do we think is the best approach, and we should treat each other always professionally and with respect.
Definitely, well said. And that's those are the type of stories I feel like all Canadians like to hear because at some times there's lots of these partisan divides and people get into these heated debates. And as you said, with question period, there are a lot of entertaining partisan moments. And Canadians do like to know that members of Parliament, regardless of their party affiliation, are working together to get good legislation passed. And those are the type of stories we all like to hear. And I'm glad to hear that you, as a conservative member, are reaching out to liberal members and other members to get this work done. And you did throw your hat in the ring for the conservative leadership this past year, and you sort of been a very outspoken conservative member in the party. So I'm sort of curious what you think of what's going on today in Canadian politics, but also in the Conservative Party. We're sort of seeing this, I guess, a bit of a divide within the party with more moderate and progressive conservatives versus perhaps more right leaning and reform type conservatives as well. Where do you sort of see the Conservative Party heading in the next couple of years, and I guess just Canadian politics in general?
Well, I think the Conservative Party it's a big tent party, so it's always had quite a diverse range of views, and we're very much in favor of the freedom of individuals to think what they want, and so that on the one hand is great for the individuals, but it makes it hard to manage as a collective group. And I think over time, the Conservative Party will be moving to the center. I think that we've seen the Liberals have moved really far to the left. And that's not where most Canadians are. Most Canadians want a balance of fiscal responsibility and social compassion. And that is more to the center. And I think that the party is trying to move there. And of course, the ones that are on the very far right don't like that. The ones that are towards the middle think it's not quick enough. So it's something to manage. But Aaron O'Toole is a seasoned leader. He's got a lot of experience in Parliament, in the military, and in life in general. And he's a nice guy to boot, and people do like him. So I think he's got the ability to bring us together and keep us together while we still have our individual rights of freedom.
Interesting perspective. Yeah, for sure. I mean, so I guess like where do you see sort of yourself? I mean, playing a role in all this. I know, you are definitely a very vocal advocate for many issues we've talked about. But I guess where do you sort of see yourself, contributing to the Conservative Party, to politics in the next couple of years?
Well, I'm helping to change the party. Certainly, the palliative care bill is a classic example. When I said I was going to bring that forward, the party said, "Well, this is really not one of our issues. We don't really, do." Those issues. Our idea of healthcare is, we increase the transfers to the province and we let them worry about it. So, but they saw that with the success of that bill, um, that really there's a place for compassion. And it's not all about being fiscal conservatives and caring about the economy, but we have to care about the people as well. And I'm one that comes with good solutions, and I don't just bring my solutions to the Conservative Party. When I have ideas like in this pandemic, I'm sending them to the health minister and to the minister responsible for border controls, and letting them know what technology is available that I see out there. So I think that's how I can make a difference and try to make wise decisions and better decisions in government on both sides of the aisle.
That's interesting. Yeah, definitely. And I think a lot of Canadians are glad to hear that there are, members, just, I mean, besides in the Conservative Party, but also just in general and in the House of Commons who are willing to, I guess, step out of the boundaries and get done the work that needs to be done, right? So that's very awesome, and thanks for sharing that with us. And I also wanted to, one of your constituents, I guess, younger constituents, his name's Tristan Bola. I think he's on your I guess youth council, perhaps.
Absolutely.
And so,
Tristan is
yeah, I know. So
they're a smart bunch, but he is one of the most intelligent, I must say. We predict he will be a lawyer someday, but he's definitely one that comes. And the youth council meets, and we talk about the legislation that's before the House and what people think about those issues. And then we had a great session where each of them was told, if you were prime minister for the day, what would you do for the country? what change would you make?
Mm.
So those are
Well,
great
that's
discussions.
that's great that you have a youth council and you're allowing young people in the riding to engage with their MP. And so I know Tristan was really excited for this conversation and he had a question. So I'm just going to play it for you here.
Hi, Mrs. Gladu. I hope all is well with you today. My question is in regard to Canadian and Chinese relations, which unfortunately are at an all time low right now. My first question would be, what are your thoughts and the PC party's thoughts on Chinese mining companies coming into the Canadian Arctic to mine? I know some are saying that it's a threat to national security, and others are saying they should be allowed to. My second question would be about the Uyghur genocide that's going on in the Xinjiang province in China right now. We see what Justin Trudeau and the Liberal Party is trying to do to combat this. I'm just curious on what your opinions are and what the PC party would be doing if they were the governing party in Canada to improve Chinese-Canadian relations on the genocide and on the mining issue. Thank you.
Awesome. So I don't know perhaps if the audio came in best, but essentially what he was just asking was in regards to the Chinese mining in the Arctic and as well Canada-China relations and the Uyghur genocide in China and I guess perhaps what the Conservative Party's approach would be in regards to Canada-China relations.
Those are great questions, both. Let's start with the second one first with the Uyghurs. And clearly, this is a genocide. And many of our allies have called it a genocide. But, the Conservatives brought a motion to the House to have this called a genocide. And all the Liberals voted against that motion. And so that was really unacceptable. The backbenchers,
Well, I
the
mean,
backbenchers were allowed to vote for it, and they did. But the
yeah.
cabinet and the prime minister didn't even show up for the vote. So I think that's awful because when something is a genocide, the UN has got prescriptive actions that countries have to do in order to, sanction countries that commit genocide. And so I think that's important. And we really need to strengthen our position with China. China has not been Canada's friend in many ways. We think of the two Michaels that are still imprisoned, the number of things that they did in terms of our grain and canola to put trade barriers in place that really cost billions of dollars and was very hurtful to the Canadian economy. We see on the security front, Huawei, a threat to our national security. We have had a number of hacks from the Chinese government. And so really we need to protect our sovereignty. And it's a balance then. We know that China is a big economy and we want to do business where it makes sense for both. But we have to speak out against the human rights violations. We have to protect ourselves and the security of our private information. With respect to the mining in the north, that's an example of economic opportunity. And so Nunavut has got the ability, they've got their own government to decide whether or not they want to take advantage of having a Chinese company operate there. Obviously, anytime we have Chinese companies operating in Canada, and we have a lot of them, we have to make sure that the security concerns are addressed. I don't have particular concerns about security because of the remoteness of the location, the fact that it's going to create jobs for a location that really needs those jobs and has huge issues of food insecurity and poverty that this would go a long way to addressing. And so I think there's a balance and we need to find it, but we don't have it today in our relationship with China.
Well said. Yeah, definitely for sure. And as you mentioned, there are a lot of factors between Canada and China that are of concern. And I'd say at the top of the list are the imprisonment of the two Michaels. And I definitely look forward to seeing them hopefully being released in the near future. And so in general, just thank you so much for coming on the show today. I mean, I really appreciate it. Taking some of the time out of your day to come chat with me, and I bet Tristan really appreciates it, and lots of our fellow youth who are trying to get engaged in politics. And thanks for just sharing your story. The stories are what matter, and they really motivate young people and inspire us, and let us know that we can break down barriers, right?
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. And I think it really is important for young people to be aware of what's going on in the world. We have some of the biggest and most complex things that are happening now, and you you are the generation that are going to lead and fix. And so knowing about them now and discussing them and forming your views, I think are really important. And I'm happy to have a role in that.
Thank you so much. And for everyone listening, make sure to check out Marilyn's book, Tales of the Globetrot. You can, purchase it at any of your, I guess, local bookstores and online as well. And it's an interesting book. Make sure to check it out. Awesome. So, Marilyn, thank you so much for joining the show. I really
All
appreciate
right.
it.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.